born and raised in St. James. I left here about 1953 to go to school, and then I got a job in Austin, Minnesota. I'll start out by kind of telling you how the Wermerskirchens got to St. James. My great-grandfather's name was Franz Joseph Wermerskirchen. He was born in 25 miles southwest of Cologne, Germany, in the two villages, I don't know which one, Grossbernich and Kleinbernich. He was a college professor, and for whatever reason, he came to the United States, and he had 7 children. 6 of them were born in Germany and partially schooled, and my grandfather, Gregor, was conceived in Germany, and he settled in Jordan, Minnesota, and he went farming. So that must have been quite a transition from a college professor to a farmer. And he brought his books with him and his organ. And he believed in education, but my grandfather, he didn't think too much of schooling, and I guess he didn't care for it, but he loved music. And they lived in Jordan, and my dad was born in Jordan. And then shortly afterwards, they came to St. James and settled here. And my grandfather's first job, I think he was a constable here at St. James. And I would guess those days they didn't carry a weapon. They probably carried a club, if anything. And he died in 1927. He died in the bandbox where he was working. I thought my dad was going to die there too. But anyway, my mother told me more about him than my dad did. But I guess he was a good-natured sort of a guy. And the story goes that if there was some poor guy had too much to drink in the saloon, he would come with a wheelbarrow, throw the guy in the wheelbarrow, and haul him home. So anyway, after that, they started a cigar factory. And it was in this house north of the BP station out by the fairgrounds. That was the house where they started. And there was 3 cigar factories in St. James. There was the Crowleys, the Bruners, and the Wermerskirchens. And C.T. Crowley went on to buy the Ford dealership in St. James, and his son was Winfield. And I bought my first 2 cars from the Crowleys. And so then my dad went into the Army during the First World War. I think he volunteered because he loved music. He got into the 136th Infantry Band. And they went to Camp Cody, Texas, and then from there they went to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and they're over into France. And when he got to France, when he wasn't tooting his horn, he was a stretcher bearer. He got a little dose of mustard gas and was hospitalized, but I don't think he had any permanent damage. And when the war ended, he got transferred to another outfit, and he had to stay in Germany as the Army of Occupation. Well, when he come back, the family bought the bandbox. They were running that. Well, then came Prohibition. No beer.
No beer.
They were up the creek.
Yeah.
So they ran it and survived by just with pop and pool. And so then they sold it to Albert Olson. I don't know if any of you...
We graduated with his daughter.
Yeah, and so then the others, now Gret, he died 25 and I was born in 32, so and Rose, she died early on, so I didn't know any of them, and so I don't know what Gret did, but Philly, he worked for the county. He drove a truck and he plowed snow in the winter, and he'd always tell me stories about the winters in the 30s where he'd go out and the roads would drift shut right behind him, so he wouldn't come back home at night. He'd stay at a farm, and of course the city or the county would reimburse the farmers, and so that's what he did. And Edward, now everybody in St. James that lived here probably knows St. James had more per capita than any town in the world, and I knew them most because I hung around the bandbox, and but everybody had a nickname. My dad's was T-Meyer, and he got that nickname because he loved baseball, and Miller's in Minneapolis and the St. Paul Saints, and there was a ball player named T-Meyer. So I was Little T and Wormy to my other friend. Grandpa, he was Fight, and I think that was some German thing. But Philly was Clip Clop, And how he got that name was when he was little, he developed polio, and they put a brace on his leg, so when he walked, he kind of walked like this, and it would go click, click, click. So they'd say, "Here comes Clip Clop." And Edward was Gams. Now, how he got that name was there was a political boss in Chicago, Gams somebody, so they hung that one on him. So, and then Albert Olson, he was White Hope.
Yes.
And how he
was
got
a
that
boxer.
was that this is at a time when Joe Louis and Jack Johnson, some of the blacks were coming up in boxing, and White Hope was an amateur boxer, a heavyweight, so he was a great White Hope. Didn't turn out that way, but anyway. But one thing about the Wermerskirchens, they love music, and they like to talk. I got the talking part, but not the music. But anyway, my grandfather and his 4 sons and my cousin Max played in the St. James Fire Department band. My dad, they were charter members, and my dad was the last one to die. And they had their own orchestra, and not all of them were Wermerskirchens, but they really loved music, and so and they're all buried here. Edward and his wife are over there. My parents are in the new part. My sister is in the new part. Philly and his wife Cora are out at Mount Hope, along with Max, my cousin, and his wife. So I guess I'm the last one of that bunch, hanging on by a thread. I have 5 kids, 4 daughters and 1 boy. The boy's name is Frank Wermerskirchen, but sadly he's just had 1 kid, and that's a gal, Frankie Joe. So when old Frank checks him in, that's the end. So the only blood relative I have left in St. James is Trish Nelson. Some of you probably know her. And she married Mark Nelson. They farm just west of St. James. Now, did anybody have any questions?
Are you coming back here too? In the end, are you coming back here?
Me?
Yeah.
To be buried in here?
No, no.
Oh.
She'd haunt me. No. I don't know. I haven't found the place yet, but what I'm shooting for, they're trying to start a veteran cemetery at Preston, Minnesota. And it's going to be ready in 2015. I'm going to try to make it that long, and they can plant me out there sometime. So, but, you know, this St. James was a good town to grow up in. And I just had great memories of growing up here in St. James. And, you know, most of you are probably aware of Tom Brokaw writing the book of the greatest generation. Well, we were the best generation because we grew up in a time when things were pretty simple, but they were good.
Yep. Yeah.
And I always like to come back to St. James. But sad part of it, I know more people out here than I do in town. That's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions? Anybody else? You want to look at some of this stuff?
Yeah.
I got sort of a crude family tree there, but this thing here was what my dad carried when he was in the Army. It's a little prayer book with a medal on it.